Hi everyone, my name is Melissa from inspiremeasap. In today's video, I want to share with you a metacognition thinking strategy. This strategy that I'm going to explain in today's video is all about teaching your students that readers feel different emotions when reading. This mini lesson comes directly from my Unit 2 Readers Workshop resource. In this mini lesson, I break down the different components about the making a connection, explicit instruction, guided practice, link to the daily reading, and then also the closing and sharing. Now, you might remember that in the previous lessons, we created thinking hats together to remind us about those comprehension strategies that I'd be teaching throughout the unit. And to begin this mini lesson, I would first start by making that connection to what we are currently learning about in this unit. So I might say something, for example, boys and girls, yesterday we learned about how to use thinking stems to think as we are reading. And so maybe I might refer to the anchor chart that we created in the previous week. I would now move on to the explicit instruction, which is really the meat and the heart of this mini lesson. For the explicit instruction, I am going to pick out a favorite book of mine, a book that I may or may not have already read aloud to my students, but a book that I am passionate about. It doesn't even, for example, have to be a book, by the way. It could be a text that's maybe a recipe, a text that's on a website, something that is a text that you feel passionate about, whether it is sad, happy, confused, angry, all of the above, something that you can demonstrate to your students that you have strong feelings about it. So for this explicit instruction, I chose Because of Winn-Dixie. So I might say, for example, this is something I might say to my students as part of the explicit instruction. Boys and girls, today you will learn about how readers feel different emotions as they are reading. I recently just finished a great book. I have to tell you, it's probably one of my favorite books. I loved this book so much. I had so many different emotions as I was reading this book, you guys. I was laughing, I was crying, I felt so sad, I felt so happy. There were parts in the book where I was laughing and crying at the same time. I felt so sad for Opal. And guys, Opal is the main character in the book. When she was missing her mama so much, it made me cry. I felt so bad that she was having so much pain in this story. I felt so happy when at the end of the story, Winn-Dixie, who's Opal's dog, she was found, because at first she got lost at the party and then they found her, and oh, I was so happy. Guys, this is one of my favorite books that I have ever read. One of the reasons why I liked this book so much is because I had a lot of different feelings as I was reading. Do you know that I love to see you laugh, cry? I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I do. I love to see you laugh, and even if you maybe cry when you're reading. The reason why I love that, boys and girls, is because that shows me, your teacher, that you are thinking about what you are reading. Do you remember when we read that story the other day and we all kind of had a tissue because it was so sad? Guys, that's telling me that we were thinking about what we are reading. And good readers have so many different emotions as they are reading. At the next point of the mini lesson, I would then move on to the active engagement or the guided practice part of the mini lesson. So I would then teach my students directly about this anchor chart, and I would explain to them how readers feel different emotions. Boys and girls, you might feel sad as you are reading today. Boys and girls, you might feel happy when you are reading today. You might feel confused as you're reading. You might feel angry. You might want to break down one emotion at a time with your students. I find that it works well if I just combine all emotions at the same time and just talk through them all together when I'm teaching this lesson, which I might do over the course of a few days, because it is a very in-depth lesson that you will want to do repeated teachings of. I would then invite my students to share for part of the guided practice. One thing I forgot to mention is just like I shared one of my favorite books that I read with my students, I might have my students bring one of their favorite books to the actual mini lesson. So now at this point, I might say, boys and girls, I shared with you some of the different emotions that I had when reading my favorite book. I want you to take a few seconds to turn and talk with your partner, and I want you to share what you were feeling as you were reading your favorite book. Just like you saw and heard me do, I want you to do that with your partner. Get ready to turn and talk now. And then I would have my students with their favorite book that they brought from the classroom library, from home, from their book nook, whatever it is about their favorite book, they're going to share why they loved it so much in regards to what they were feeling as they were reading that book. And you might notice that they may not have a whole lot to share. And that's because you may have not taught this lesson to them yet. And so they don't know that they should be having different emotions as they're reading. So this might be a very new concept to them, a very new lesson to them. As they move on to their differentiated work time, where they go to their independent reading and I pull groups for guided reading, I then invite the students to write down on a sticky note or in their reader's notebook one emotion that they have as they were reading today. So in their reader's notebook, as they are reading independently, they would write down one emotion that they had as they were reading books from their book nook that day. So it wouldn't necessarily be a book that they brought to the carpet for the mini lesson as their favorite book. It could be a new book. It could be a book that they're just starting today. It could be a book that I'm reading with them in a guided reading group. It's really any book that they are reading that is going to demonstrate that they can apply what I taught for the mini lesson in their own reading with their own book. One of the things that I like to use with my guided reading groups is I break down in a small little card size here, I guess you could say, the anchor chart into all the different emotions that I introduce to them as emotions that you would feel as you are reading. So when I meet with my students in a guided reading group and I used this lesson during my mini lesson, I might introduce to them a new text in the guided reading group, and I might say to them, guys, in our guided reading group today, we're going to continue reading Frog and Toad. We already started Frog and Toad and read a few chapters yesterday. Guys, we're going to continue reading Frog and Toad, but we're going to focus on what we are feeling as we are reading today. And then I would introduce this to my students and show them how, as you're reading today, I want you to use these little sticky notes. And if there's a time when you're reading, you notice that you are feeling surprised, you're going to take the pink sticky note, because pink represents surprised, and you're going to put that in the spot of the text where you were reading and you really were surprised at what happened. When you do this in your guided group, your guided reading group, you might also have to explicitly demonstrate what that looks like and how to use this tool with them. So for example, in my guided reading group, I might say, boys and girls, this is the book that we are going to read today, and I wanted to show you how we're going to use this tool to help us think about what we are reading. And oh, boys and girls, on this page, I noticed that I felt very angry. I am going to use the yellow Post-it note to represent what I was thinking as I read that page. And as you are doing this with the guided reading group, you are going to want to share with them that you're not going to feel all these emotions every time you read. Guys, you might only feel one emotion as you read the entire book. Maybe you feel silly. Maybe you feel happy. That's okay as long as you are showing me and that you can identify what emotion that you are thinking as you are reading. Once our differentiated work time is over, so that's about 45 minutes to 60 minutes, and I've met with a few guided reading groups, maybe I did a running record or two, maybe I had a reading conference, I'm then ready to move on to the closing part or the sharing part of the reading workshop lesson. And this is the point in time where I call all of my readers back over to the carpet together as a whole group, and we wrap up what we were doing that day for reading. So for example, I might say to them, guys, what did you feel as you were reading today? I want you to take your reader's notebook or to take your sticky note, whatever it is that they used that day. I want you to look at what you did in your reader's notebook, and I wanted you to share with your partner, turn and talk, share with your partner what emotion you were feeling as you were reading today. And I listen in to hear what my students are sharing with each other. That really is going to be an indicator to me if they indeed understood what that mini lesson was. You could also have them write it down. Sometimes I have them do that as a little exit ticket. They write it down, or I use the sticky note or what they wrote in the reader's notebook as the exit ticket. I hope that you got some ideas of how you can use the metacognition strategy of teaching your students that readers feel different emotions as they are reading.